The morning sun pierced through the curtains of the hotel room, hitting Teni's face. She groaned, her eyelids feeling like they were weighed down by lead. When she finally managed to open them, the brightness forced her to squint and turn away. Her head was spinning. Where am I? She wondered. As she tried to sit up, a sharp pain shot through her lower body. She pulled back the duvet and gasped. She was completely naked. Her heart began to race against her ribs. She looked at the white sheets and saw the unmistakable red stains of blood. Panic, cold and thick, washed over her. She tried to think. Last night, there was a party. Her stepsister, Tiwa, had been so kind, offering her a drink to relax her nerves. Tiwa had helped her to this room when she started feeling dizzy. But after that, there was only darkness and a vague memory of a heavy weight on top of her. No, 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 Teni whispered, tears blurring her vision. She had been married to Segun for 4 months. Even though it was an arranged marriage, she had wanted to be a good wife. They had agreed to wait until they felt a real connection before sleeping together. Now, her first time had been stolen by a stranger while she was unconscious. She scrambled out of bed, her legs shaking, and grabbed her dress from the floor. She rushed into the bathroom, desperate to wash the shame of her skin. Just as she turned on the tap, she heard the bedroom door slam open. I told you, look at her. It was the voice of Mrs. Balogun, Segun's mother. Teni froze. Through the crack in the bathroom door, she saw them. Segun was there, looking not angry but almost satisfied. Beside him was Tiwa, looking smug. Take the pictures of the bed, Mrs. Balogun commanded. This is the evidence we need. My son cannot stay married to a loose woman who brings men into hotel rooms. Finally, Segun said, his voice cold. He turned to Tiwa and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply right there in the room where his wife had just been assaulted. I can finally divorce that boring girl and marry you, Tiwa. You are the one I've always wanted. Easy, my love, Tiwa giggled, leaning into him. We'll be married soon. My sister is finally out of the way. Teni leaned against the bathroom wall, sobbing silently. It wasn't an accident. Her husband and her own sister had drugged her. They had traded her dignity for a divorce. She waited until she heard their footsteps disappear down the hallway before she crawled out. She dressed quickly and fled the hotel, feeling like a ghost. Shortly after she left, a man named Emeka entered the room. He looked at the empty, messy bed and pulled out his phone. Hello, boss, Emeka said into the phone. The lady is gone, but I have taken the photos. There was blood on the sheets. She was a virgin. I have the proof of her innocence whenever you need it. Teni arrived at their house in Lekki by taxi, her mind a whirlwind of pain. As she stepped into the posh living room, she was met with a glare so hot it could burn. You shameless girl, Mrs. Balogun screamed, stepping forward. You are a married woman, yet you are out sleeping with men like a common street girl. Where is your shame? Segun thundered, acting as if his heart was broken. I tried to love you, Teni, but you are just cheap. Teni's grief turned into a sharp, cold anger. You both are hypocrites, she snapped. Segun, you gave me that drink. You drugged your own wife so you could pave the way for Tiwa. You wanted a divorce. You should have been man enough to ask for it instead of destroying me. Segun flinched, surprised she had figured it out, but his mother didn't let up. She lunged forward, grabbing Teni by her braided hair. Don't you dare accuse my son, the older woman yelled, dragging Teni across the floor. A girl like you should just go and jump into the third mainland bridge and die. My son will not stay with another man's leftover. Teni tried to fight back, but she was too weak from the drugs and the trauma. Her head hit the floor, her vision swelled, and for the second time that day, the world went dark. Teni opened her eyes 3 days later. The smell of antiseptic told her she was in a hospital. She looked down and saw a drip attached to her hand. Her body felt heavy and her head was still throbbing from where Mrs. Balogun had dragged her by the hair. She was alone. No husband sat by her bed. No sister brought her food. The silence was louder than any shout. Just as she was trying to adjust her pillow, the door opened. It wasn't a doctor. It was a man in a sharp black suit carrying a leather briefcase. Good morning, Mrs. Balogun,
Or should I say Miss Teni? The man said coldly. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down. He didn't ask how she was feeling. He just opened his bag and pulled out a stack of papers. I am Segun's lawyer. My client wants to end this marriage immediately. Sign these papers so we can all move on. Teni looked at the papers, her eyes filling with tears. He couldn't even wait for me to leave the hospital? Does Segun have no soul at all? Sign the papers, Teni, the lawyer urged. And if I refuse, Teni snapped, her voice trembling. He drugged me. He set me up with another man. I can tell the police. I can fight this. The lawyer laughed, a dry, nasty sound. With what evidence? Everyone saw you in that hotel room. If you fight this, we will go to the newspapers and the blogs. We will tell the whole of Nigeria that you are a common cheat. We will also dig up your late mother's past. We will tell the world she was a side chick who had you out of wedlock. Do you want to disgrace your mother's memory? Teni felt her heart stop. Her mother was her only treasure. Even though people called her an illegitimate child because her parents weren't married when she was born, Teni knew her mother was a good woman. She couldn't let them drag her mother's name through the mud of Lagos. Give me the pen, Teni whispered. She picked up the golden pen with a shaking hand. She began to read the terms. It was worse than she imagined. The paper stated that 1. She was never to return to Segun's house, not even to pick up a needle. 2. She was giving up all her shares in her father's company, Ademola Ventures. 3. All her inherited properties will be transferred to Segun as compensation for the shame she caused him. She was signing away her life. She was signing herself into the streets. With a heavy sigh, she scribbled her name, Teniola Ademole. The lawyer snatched the papers back, a greedy smile on his face. Wise choice. I wish you luck. You need it. He turned and walked out of the ward without looking back. Teni collapsed back onto the bed and sobbed. She had been ruined. She had no parents, no husband, no home, and now no money. Outside the hospital, the lawyer climbed into a tinted SUV. Segun and Tiwa were sitting in the back seat holding hands. She signed, the lawyer announced. I used the threat about her mother. She folded like a piece of paper. Brilliant, Segun shouted. I'll add an extra 200,000 naira to your balance. I am finally free from that boring girl. Tiwa leaned her head on Segun's shoulder, looking very happy. I told you it would work, baby. Now all the Mo family wealth belongs to us. Teni is just a ghost now. They drove off laughing, heading to a fancy restaurant in Victoria Island to celebrate their victory. 2 days later, Teni was discharged. She had no one to pick her up. She used the last bit of money in her purse to pay the hospital bill and took a taxi. She didn't know where to go, so she went to her father's house, the house she grew up in. She thought her stepmother, Molly, might have some pity on her. After all, it was Molly who forced her to marry Segun in the first place. But as the taxi pulled up to the gate, she saw the house was decorated with flowers. She could hear loud music and the smell of party jollof rice. Through the gate, she saw Tiwa and Segun dancing, surrounded by friends. Molly was there too, laughing and spraying them with money. Teni stayed inside the taxi, her heart breaking into a million pieces. Her own family was throwing a party to celebrate her downfall. Madam, we are here, the driver said, looking at her through the mirror. He saw her tears. Are you okay? Teni didn't answer. She couldn't step out. If she went in there, they would only mock her. Driver, she said, her voice cracking, please, just drive. Take me anywhere. I have no home anymore. The driver sighed and shook his head. Life is hard, my sister, but you must be strong. As the car drove away from her father's house, Teni looked out of the window at the Lagos skyline. She felt empty. But deep inside her, a small spark of survival was starting to burn. She didn't know how, but she knew she couldn't die like this.
Teni felt like a walking corpse. After leaving her father's house, she wandered through the busy streets. The noise of Lagos, the yellow buses shouting Obalende, Oshodi, the constant honking of horns, and the heat of the afternoon sun all felt like they were mocking her. She had nowhere to go. Her stepmother, Molly, had been part of the plan all along. Every time Teni thought about it, fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. She was loitering near a bus stop. her mind completely blank, when she accidentally stepped onto the main road. Screesh! A car zoomed past, nearly brushing her dress. The wind from the speeding vehicle made her stagger. "Teniola, are you crazy?" a voice screamed. A hand grabbed Teni's arm and pulled her back onto the sidewalk, just as another car flew by. Teni looked up with blurry eyes and saw a familiar face. "Rosa?" Teni whispered. Rosa was her best friend from their secondary school days. They hadn't spoken much since Teni got married, but Rosa's face was now full of terror and worry. "Teni, what is wrong with you? Do you want to kill yourself?" Rosa yelled, looking at Teni's swollen red eyes and her rumpled clothes. Teni looked like someone who had been sleeping under a bridge. "Thank you, Rosa," Teni said, her voice sounding hollow. "Maybe it would have been better if you let the car hit me. At least I would be with my mother now. My misery would be over." "Don't talk like that," Rosa snapped. People passing by were starting to stare, some whispering that maybe she was a mad woman, while others just hissed and moved on. Rosa didn't care. She pulled Teni to a quiet corner under a shade. "Where are you going, Teni? Where is your husband? Where is that your sister, Tiwa?" "I don't have a home anymore, Rosa. I am a wanderer. I have nothing." Rosa didn't need to hear more. She saw the pain in her eyes and knew something terrible had happened. She didn't ask for the full story yet. She just flagged down a yellow Danfo bus and pushed Teni inside. Rosa lived in a small, neat face me I face you apartment in Yaba with her mother, Mama Rosa, and her younger brother. It was a tiny place compared to the mansion Teni was used to in Lekki, but the moment they walked in, it felt warmer than any palace. Mama Rosa was surprised to see her daughter come home with a woman who looked so broken. "Who is this, Rosa?" "It's Teni, ma, my friend from school. Things are bad for her, ma. Very bad." Mama Rosa didn't hesitate. She didn't ask Teni for her story or her ID card. She just went to the kitchen. "Oh yeah, Teni, go and wash your face. There is jollof rice in the pot. Eat first, then you can sleep." Teni sat on the small plastic chair in their living room and began to sob. She couldn't believe it. Her own blood sister threw her out, but a girl she hadn't seen in years was feeding her. "I am so sorry for disturbing you," Teni sniffled. "Shh," Mama Rosa said, rubbing Teni's back. "An old friend has become your family today. Stay here as long as you need. We're not rich, but we have a roof and we have love." 2 days passed. Teni spent most of her time staring at the ceiling in the small guest corner they gave her. Rosa's brother would tell small jokes to try and make her smile, and slowly Teni began to eat a little more. She felt safe, but she also felt a strange heaviness in her heart. She was still reserved, ashamed of what had happened to her. Finally, on the 4th night, after a dinner of dodo and fried eggs, Mama Rosa sat Teni down. "My daughter," Mama Rosa said gently, "you are safe here, but your heart is carrying a heavy load. If you don't talk, that load will break you. What happened?" Teni looked at Rosa, then at Mama Rosa. She took a deep breath and began to tell them everything: the drugging, the hotel room, the blood on the sheets, the divorce papers, and how her own father's wealth had been stolen from her. As she spoke, Rosa started crying. Even Mama Rosa was shaking her head in anger. "How can people be so wicked?" Rosa cried. "Your own sister, your own husband?" "It wasn't my fault my parents weren't married when I was born," Teni said, her voice rising with pain. "Why am I the one suffering for their choices? Why did they trap me like an animal?" "Listen to me, Teniola. The world is cruel, yes, but you are still alive. You must be strong, not for Segun or Tiwa, but for yourself. The best is yet to come. Don't let their evil stay in your heart, or it will poison you." Teni stayed with them for over a month. She was finally starting to breathe again. She didn't know that inside her, a new life, actually 2 new lives, were already beginning to grow, changing her destiny forever. Teni lived with Rosa and her family for over a month. In that small house in Yaba, she found a peace she never had in the big mansion in Lekki. Rosa's brother, Toby, always made sure there was extra plantain for her, and Mama Rosa treated her like the daughter she never had. Back in the luxury parts of Lagos, Segun was feeling restless. He had sent boys to look for Teni everywhere. He didn't love her, but his conscience was prickling him. Or maybe he just wanted to give her a little money so he could feel like a big man instead of a villain. But his boys found nothing. It was as if Teniola had vanished into the Lagos lagoon. "Why are you so moody?" Tiwa asked him one evening as they sat in a fancy lounge. "Are you missing that boring sister of mine?" "No," Segun lied, forcing a smile. "I'm just stressed about work. Those clients in Abuja haven't replied to my proposals." Tiwa laughed and rubbed his arm. "Don't worry, honey, you have me now. We are the perfect power couple." While they were celebrating their perfect life, Teni was facing a new nightmare. For 2 weeks, Teni had been feeling strange. Her body felt heavy, and the smell of Mama Rosa's cooking, which she usually loved, made her want to vomit. She looked at the calendar on her phone and realized her monthly visitor was very late. "No, it can't be," she thought, her heart pounding. "Not after just that one night." She didn't tell Rosa. She couldn't. She waited until Rosa went to work at the insurance company, then she quietly slipped out. She went to a small private clinic far from their neighborhood. She didn't want anyone to recognize her. "I want to run a pregnancy test," she told the nurse. The wait for the result was the longest hour of Teni's life. She sat in the plastic chair, clutching her handbag, watching the ceiling fan spin slowly. "If I am pregnant, what will I do? I have no job. I have no husband. The father is a man I don't even know." Finally, the doctor called her into his office. He looked at the paper, then looked at her. "Madam, you are 6 weeks pregnant," he said plainly. Teni felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She started sweating, even though the AC was on. Her blouse became damp. Do you want to keep it?" the doctor asked gently. "You look distressed. If the father is around, he needs to sign some papers if you want to end it." "I don't know who the father is," Teni blurted out, and she immediately bit her lip, regretting her words. The doctor's expression changed to one of pity. "I see. Look, this is a difficult situation, but I advise you to think carefully. You are young and healthy. Here is my card. If you need someone to talk to, call me." Teni took the card with a shaking hand and practically ran out of the clinic. She didn't go straight home. She walked until her feet ached. She thought about her life. If she stayed in Lagos, Segun and Tiwa would eventually find out. They would mock her. They might even try to take the baby or use it to disgrace her further. That evening, Rosa came home excited. "Teniola, I talked to my boss. There's an opening for an assistant role. You can start on Monday." Teni forced a smile, but her heart was breaking. She couldn't take the job. She couldn't stay. 2 days later, while Rosa was at the market, Teni packed the few clothes Rosa had bought for her. She looked around the small room that had been her sanctuary. She took out a pen and a piece of paper. "Rosa, Mama, Toby, you saved my life when I was at my lowest, but I have to go. I need to become a woman that can stand on her own 2 feet. I cannot tell you where I'm going yet, but please don't look for me. I love you all." When Rosa returned and found the empty room and the note, she collapsed onto the bed crying. Why did she leave? Did we do something wrong? Mama Rosa picked up the note, her eyes sad but wise. "No, Rosa, she didn't leave because of us. She left to find herself. Let her go. God will go with her." 4 years later, the sliding doors of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport opened and a woman stepped out into the humid Lagos air. She wasn't the broken girl who had fled 4 years ago. This woman walked with her head held high. She was wearing a tailored navy blue suit and expensive heels. She looked like a madam in every sense of the word. Beside her were 2 little boys, about 3 years old. They were identical twins. They were dressed in matching denim jackets and little sneakers. They had the kind of handsome faces that made people stop and stare. "Mommy, is this Nigeria?" Taiwo asked in a soft voice. "Yes, my prince," Teni replied, ruffling his hair. "This is home, and this time we are not hiding." She hailed a taxi. "Take us to Yaba," she told the driver. As the car drove through the familiar Lagos traffic, Teni looked at her sons. She often wondered who their father was. They had a certain big man look about them, sharp features and a commanding presence even at their age. When the taxi stopped in front of Rosa's house, Teni's heart raced. She stepped out, followed by the boys. Rosa was standing by the door, throwing out some dirty water, when she saw the beautiful woman. "Teniola!" she screamed, dropping her bucket. Teni smiled, tears in her eyes. "I'm back, Rosa, and I brought company." For the rest of that day 4 years ago, Rosa's house had been silent and sad. Rosa, her mother, and Toby couldn't understand why Teni had vanished. They searched for her, but it was as if she had dissolved into thin air. They didn't know that Teni had taken a night bus to Enugu, and from there, through the help of the doctor she met at the clinic, she had found a way to travel to country X to start a new life. 4 years later, the Lagos airport was as rowdy as ever. Teni stepped onto the tarmac, feeling the familiar heat on her skin. She wasn't the shivering, broken girl who had left. She was now a woman of substance. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her skin glowed like expensive honey. Her two sons, Taiwo and Kehinde, walked beside her. Even though they were only toddlers, they walked with a natural levels that made people move out of their way. They had deep, intelligent eyes and a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite. "Mommy, people are looking at us," Kehinde whispered, holding Teni's hand tight. Teni smiled. She was used to it. Everywhere they went, people stared at the boys. They were too handsome to be ignored. "It's because you are princes, my dear. Just keep walking." Teni took a taxi straight to the old neighborhood in Yaba. As the car pulled up to the familiar "Face Me, I Face You" building, Teni felt a lump in her throat. This was where her life was saved. Rosa was outside, busy arguing with a neighbor about a shared electricity bill, when she saw a flashy car stop. She stopped talking when she saw a big madam step out. Then she saw the face. "Teniola!" Rosa's voice cracked. She dropped the bowl in her hand. Teni laughed and opened her arms. "Rosa, it's me." Rosa ran and hugged her so hard they almost fell. They both cried right there on the street. Mama Rosa heard the noise and came rushing out, wiping her hands on her wrapper. When she saw Teni, she raised her hands to the sky. "Jehovah, you brought my daughter back," Mama Rosa shouted, pulling Teni into a warm embrace. Then they noticed the two little boys standing quietly by the taxi. "Teni, who are these?" Rosa asked, her eyes wide. "These are my sons," proudly, Taiwo and Kehinde. "Boys, come and say good afternoon to your aunties." The boys stepped forward and bowed politely. "Good afternoon, Ma," they said in unison. Rosa's brother, Toby, came out and immediately carried the boys on his shoulders, laughing. The whole house was filled with joy. That evening, Mama Rosa prepared a special pot of abacha and ugba to celebrate. After the boys were tucked into bed in the small guest room, Teni and Rosa sat on the porch to talk. The Lagos night was cool, and the sound of a distant generator hummed in the background. "Teni, tell me everything," Rosa said. "Where did you go? How did you survive?" Teni took a deep breath. "When I left, I found out I was pregnant with twins. I was terrified, but the doctor I met at the clinic helped me get a job with a company abroad that needed a Nigerian representative. I worked like a slave, Rosa. I studied at night and worked during the day. I wanted to make sure my children would never have to beg for bread." "And their father?" Rosa asked quietly. "Does Segun know?" Teni's eyes turned cold. "Segun is not their father. You know what happened that night in the hotel. I don't know who the man was and I don't care. These boys are mine and mine alone." "They look like royalty, Teni," Rosa whispered. "If that man ever sees them, he will know they belong to him. They have a very strong look." Teni looked at the moon. Lagos is a big city. The chances of meeting a stranger from 4 years ago are slim. I came back to reclaim my father's legacy, not to find a ghost. But as Teni spoke, she didn't know that the mysterious lover from that night wasn't just a stranger. He was one of the most powerful men in Nigeria, and he had been looking for the woman who stole her heart and his peace that night in the hotel. The next morning, the sun rose over Yaba with a golden glow. Teni woke up early, feeling the familiar energy of Lagos. She looked at her two boys, Taiwo and Kehinde, sleeping peacefully on the bed. They looked so innocent, but she knew she had to be a lioness to protect them. She dressed in a sharp, cream-colored power suit. She looked like a woman who owned a bank. "Rosa, I'm going out," Teni said as she walked into the small kitchen. "I need to check on some things regarding my father's old company, Ademo Ventures. I also need to find a good school for the boys." "Be careful, Teni," Rosa warned, handing her a cup of tea. "Lagos has changed. And remember, Segun and Tiwa are still out there. They think you are dead or begging on the streets." Teni smiled, a cold, sharp smile. Let them think that. It makes it easier to surprise them. Teni decided to visit a high-end shopping mall on Victoria Island to get some supplies for the kids. As she walked through the glass doors, the cool AC hit her skin. She was browsing through a boutique when she heard a voice that made her blood run cold. "Oh, darling, this diamond necklace is too small. I want the one that screams wealthy wife." Teni ducked behind a clothing rack. She peered through the hangers and saw them. Tiwa looked exactly the same, but more arrogant. She was draped in expensive lace and gold jewelry. Beside her was Segun, looking stressed but trying to act big. He was holding Tiwa's shopping bags like his servant. "Tiwa, we've spent 3 million naira already this morning. The company isn't doing as well as it used to. We need to cut back." "Shut up, Segun," Tiwa snapped. "If you can't take care of me, why did you help me get rid of my sister? You promised me this soft life. Now pay for the necklace." Teni felt a wave of disgust. They were still the same, greedy and wicked. But she also felt a sense of triumph. It sounded like they were struggling. Without her father's brilliant ideas, the company was failing under their hands. Teni didn't confront them, not yet. She quietly walked out of the store before they could see her. She wasn't ready to show her face until she had the power to crush them completely. Later that afternoon, Teni went to an interview at Dantata Yaro Holdings, one of the biggest conglomerates in West Africa. She had applied for the position of Senior Creative Director. If she got this job, she would have more power than Segun could ever dream of. The office was located in a massive skyscraper overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The lobby was filled with marble and security guards in black suits. "The CEO will see you now," the secretary said, looking impressed by Teni's professional aura. Teni walked into the massive office. The chair was turned towards the window, showing the back of a man with broad shoulders and a very expensive charcoal suit. The room smelled of sandalwood and power. "Sit down, Miss Teniola," the man said. His voice was deep, smooth, and oddly familiar. It sent a shiver down Teni's spine. When the chair spun around, Teni almost lost her breath. The man was incredibly handsome, with skin the color of dark chocolate and eyes that were piercing and intelligent. But that wasn't why Teni was shocked. She looked at the man's face, his jawline, the shape of his nose, the way his brow was set. Then she thought of her sons, Taiwo and Kehinde. "He looks just like them," she thought, her heart hammering in her chest. "He looks exactly like my boys." The man, Zayn Dantata, stared at Teni. He felt a strange jolt in his heart. He had been with many women, but he had never forgotten that one night 4 years ago in a hotel room, a night that was supposed to be a setup, but ended with a woman who disappeared before he could ask her name. "Have we met before?" Zayn asked as his eyes narrowed as he studied Teni's face. Teni gripped her handbag tight. "I don't believe so, Mr. Dantata. I am here for the job." Zayn leaned forward, a mysterious smile on his lips. "We shall see. You have the skills, but I feel there is more to you than just a resume." That night, after the twins had finally fallen asleep, Mama Rosa sat down in the small parlor. She knew Teni had a lot to say. Rosa sat directly opposite her best friend, while her brother, Toby, had gone out to play games with his friends at a nearby game center. Mama Rosa, I can never thank you enough, Teni began, her voice soft. 4 years ago was the darkest time of my life. I found out I was pregnant right after the divorce. I had no money, no job, and I didn't even know the man who got me pregnant. Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she listened. But the doctor at the clinic, Dr. Lanre, was like an angel, Teni continued. He introduced me to his foster parents who live in London. They agreed to help me. That's why I traveled without telling you. I was scared and confused. Dr. Lanre's mother even helped me as a nanny so I could work and save money. Teni smiled as she thought of her journey. I worked hard for 3 years. Then, Dr. Larry helped me secure a big job back here in Lagos. I've been hired as the executive designer for the Dantata Group. That is why I'm back. Teniola, you should have at least called us, Rosa sighed, wiping her eyes. I thought maybe we offended you, but I am happy you kept those beautiful boys. They are your greatest blessing. Mama Rosa nodded in agreement. God is good. You didn't do abort, and now look at you. You are a great mother already. Teni then told them she wouldn't be staying long. Dr. Lare recommended a house for me in Lekki. I want to go and see it tomorrow and move in before I start work the next day. Rosa laughed. Abeg, let me go with you. I don't want you to just disappear with my nephews again. They all laughed, and Mama Rosa eventually went to bed, leaving the two friends to gist. So, what about that your boyfriend? Teni asked. Rosa's smile dropped. She sighed deeply. My sister, he was seeing someone else behind my back. One day, he just took me to lunch and told me it was over. He said he didn't love me anymore. I almost died of heartbreak. Teni held Rosa's hand. Don't cry, Jari. The bad ones have to leave so the good ones can enter. Look at me. I am done with men. My life is just for my children now. Love doesn't exist for me anymore. Don't say that, Rosa countered. One day, a man will love you and those boys more than you can imagine. After they said good night, Teni lay awake in the dark. She thought about Segun and Tiwa. She assumed they were living happily in the mansion they stole from her. She remembered how her father used to treat her and Tiwa like twins, buying them the same clothes and toys. It was that woman, Molly. She poisoned Tiwa's mind because of money. Teni fell asleep, believing her enemies were enjoying her wealth, but she didn't know that things were actually falling apart for Segun and Tiwa. Segun was a tired man. For 4 years, he and Tiwa had been married, but the house was silent. There were no children running around. Segun was exhausted from the pressure. He felt like he was just performing a duty, and he wanted to be left alone. Why are you acting like this? Tiwa asked one night, trying to hug him. We need to be together more if we want a child. This is the right time for me to conceive. Segun pushed her hand away. Are you going to force me? I want to sleep. Don't disturb me, or I will leave this room and sleep on the sofa. He was frustrated. He felt he was wasting his energy on a woman who couldn't give him a child. Tiwa turned her back to him, crying silently. She had tracked her ovulation and even tried IVF twice, but both times failed. She couldn't believe Segun was becoming so cold toward her. I have to tell his mother, Tiwa thought. She needs to talk sense into her son. The next morning, Segun acted as if nothing happened. He gave Tiwa a small peck on the chin and left for work. As soon as he was gone, Tiwa took her car keys and drove to Mrs. Balogun's house in Surulere. Mrs. Balogun welcomed her warmly. How is my Segun? When am I carrying my grandchild? Tiwa sighed deeply. Mama, that is why I am here. Segun is avoiding me. He doesn't want to be intimate anymore. How can I get pregnant if he won't touch me? Mrs. Balogun frowned. She knew her son didn't have a side chick, so why was he acting up?
She wanted a grandchild more than anything. "Don't worry, my daughter," she assured Tiwa. "I will handle him. Go home and prepare yourself for tonight. He will be ready for you." Tiwa smiled, relieved. She knew Segun couldn't disobey his mother. As soon as Tiwa left, Mrs. Balogun called Segun and told him to meet her for a late lunch at a popular restaurant on the island. Meanwhile, Teni was out with Rosa and Dr. Larry. They had just finished looking at a beautiful apartment in a gated estate. Teni loved it. It was perfect for her and the twins. She paid the rent, signed the papers, and felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders. "Larry, meet my best friend Rosa," Teni said, finally introducing them properly. Larry shook Rosa's hand, smiling warmly. "It's a pleasure, Rosa." "Let's go and eat to celebrate," Larry suggested. They drove to a high-end restaurant, the same one Mrs. Balogun had chosen for her meeting with Segun. Teni, Rosa, and Larry were sitting at a table, laughing and talking about the future. A few tables away, Mrs. Balogun was already waiting. She happened to look up and froze. Her eyes widened in shock. "Is that Teniola?" She hadn't seen Teni since the day she dragged her by the hair 4 years ago. Teni looked different, rich, glowing, and happy. Mrs. Balogun felt a sudden wave of guilt and fear. She wanted to stand up and leave, but just then, Segun walked in and sat down opposite her. "Mama, you said it was urgent," Segun said, noticing his mother looked pale. Mrs. Balogun didn't speak. She just tapped his arm and pointed toward the table where Teni was sitting with a handsome man. Segun turned his head. His heart skipped a beat as his eyes landed on the woman he had once thrown away like trash. Segun was in total shock. His hands began to shake as he stared across the restaurant. It was her, his ex-wife, Teni. She looked incredibly happy, laughing with her friends. She was so focused on her meal and her conversation that she didn't even notice people were staring at her. When the waiter came to take Segun and his mother's order, Mrs. Balogun could barely speak. She was just as stunned as her son. For months after the divorce, Segun had tried to find Teni. He eventually gave up, thinking she had either suffered a tragedy or managed to leave the country. But he couldn't understand where she would get the money for a flight. He had left her penniless and forbade her from taking even a single needle from his house. But the woman sitting over there didn't look poor. She looked gorgeous, elegant, and far more mature than the girl he had bullied 4 years ago. Deep down, Segun felt a sharp pang of regret. Over the last few years, he had realized he never truly loved Tiwa. He had grown to love Teni, but he realized it too late. She was gone, and he had no way to apologize. "Segun, stop acting like a fool," Mrs. Balogun hissed, trying to get his attention. He couldn't take his eyes off Teni. Even when the food arrived, Segun was so distracted that his fork was just picking at the empty tablecloth instead of his plate. Mrs. Balogun felt embarrassed. She pinched his hand hard under the table. Segun jumped, realized he was about to put an empty fork in his mouth, and tried to focus on his lunch. Teni was finishing her meal, keeping an eye on the chemistry between Larry and Rosa. She could see Larry was interested, but Rosa was playing hard to get. Teni smiled. She wanted her friends to be happy. As they stood up to leave, Teni's eyes finally locked with Segun's. She didn't flinch. She just looked away as if he were a piece of trash on the sidewalk. She had no room in her heart for people who destroyed her happiness. "Hi, Teni," Segun called out before he could stop himself. Teni paused and looked at him with a confused squint. Rosa and Larry stopped too, staring at the man who had dared to speak. "Hello, do I know you?" Teni asked, her voice cold and flat. Segun felt his face turn red. She was pretending she didn't even recognize him. "It's me, your ex-husband, Segun." Rosa and Larry exchanged looks. So this was the animal who ruined Teni's life. "My ex-husband?" Teni turned to Rosa. "Did I have a husband before who became an ex?" she asked. It so seriously that people at other tables started leaning in to listen. "Oh," Rosa replied with a loud, nasty sneer. "Oh, you mean the idiot who conspired with his mother to set his wife up, just so he could spend more time between the thighs of his own sister-in-law? Is that the fool you're asking about?" The restaurant went sodden. "Ah, yes, that's the perfect way to describe the fool sitting there with his senseless mother," Teni said with a wicked grin. "Well, nice seeing you, ex-husband." As Teni and her friends walked out, the other customers began to murmur loudly. "What a terrible man," one woman whispered. "He sleeps with his sister-in-law?" "Look at the mother," another man hissed. "She probably helped. Shameless people." "Some men can put their thing in anything as long as it has a hole," another person joked loudly. Mrs. Balogun was boiling with rage. She couldn't take the insults. She stood up and hurried out, with Segun following behind to pay the bill quickly and escape the shame. Once they were safely in the car, Mrs. Balogun turned on her son. "This is all your fault. Why did you have to call her name? You should have pretended you didn't see her." "How is it my fault? You are the one who called me to this restaurant. What is wrong with saying hi to an ex-wife?" He was shaking with anger. He didn't want his mother's lectures. "Your wife Tiwa needs you," Mrs. Balogun continued, trying to calm down. "This is the time to focus and make babies so this issue can be settled." "Did she come to report me again?" Segun snapped. "We have tried IVF twice and it failed. I can't keep wasting my strength on a woman who cannot get pregnant no matter how much I try." "It's not her fault. She wants it too," his mother encouraged. "Just try again. Maybe this time it will work." Segun leaned his head against the steering wheel. He couldn't help but think, if I was still with Teni, I would probably have 2 children by now. He realized he had traded a diamond for a piece of glass, and it was mostly his mother's pressure that led him there. "I'll try one more time, Mom," Segun sighed. "Only because you want a grandchild." Mrs. Balogun smiled. She knew her son would always listen. "Good. But whatever you do, do not tell Tiwa that we saw Teni today."
Segun drove away from the restaurant in a silent rage. He dropped his mother off and headed back to his office, but he couldn't think straight. All he could hear were the insults from the restaurant's guests. He blamed Tiwa. If she hadn't gone to report him to his mother like a child, he wouldn't have been at that restaurant, and he wouldn't have seen Teni. But seeing Teni had changed something in him. She looked more beautiful than ever, mature, sophisticated, and glowing with a confidence he had never seen before. He wondered if she was married or if she had been living abroad. He felt a desperate urge to find her and apologize. He even wondered, if I go back to her, will she still want me? He regretted throwing her out like trash 4 years ago. He realized now that he had lost a queen while chasing a shadow. While Segun was spiraling into regret, Teni was busy building her new life. She bought a sleek new car and registered Taiwo and Kehinde in a top-tier international school. With the help of Rosa and Dr. Larry, she moved her belongings into her beautiful new home in Lekki. As she settled the boys into their room, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She prepared their favorite meal, steamed buns, and promised them a fun tour of Lagos during the weekend. For the first time in years, Teni felt she had everything she needed: a great job, a beautiful home, and 2 adorable sons. That evening, Dr. Larry drove Rosa home. It was love at first sight for him. "Rosa, would you like to have lunch with me tomorrow?" he asked hopefully. Rosa felt a spark too, but she hesitated. She didn't want to step on Teni's toes. She wasn't sure if Teni had feelings for Larry, and after everything Teni had been through, Rosa refused to be another person who betrayed her. "I can't promise, but I'll try," Rosa replied cautiously. Larry smiled, telling her he would be waiting before driving off. When Rosa told her mother about the encounter with Segun at the restaurant, Mama Rosa cheered. Good! That is how a woman should stand tall. You don't let a muskrat like that man make you feel small. When Segun finally got home, he stayed quiet, pretending his mother hadn't spoken to him. To keep the peace, he took Tiwa to the bedroom. That night, Segun was unusually gentle and sweet. For the past 4 years, he had been rough and cold, treating Tiwa like a chore. But tonight, he drove her with a tenderness that made Tiwa feel like a new bride. However, Segun's mind wasn't on his wife. As he held Tiwa, the image in his head was Teni. He was imagining it was Teni he was holding, and in his passion, he started moaning her name. Teni. Teniola, he whispered. Tiwa froze. She felt uncomfortable, but she endured it, fearing that if she spoke, he would stop. When it was over, Tiwa felt sexually satisfied for the first time in years, but her heart was heavy with suspicion. Have you been thinking about my sister lately? Tiwa asked, snuggling against him. Segun snapped out of his trance. Why do you ask? You kept calling her name while we were together, and you were so sweet tonight. Were you with her today? Is that why you were acting like that? Segun felt a jolt of panic. He didn't realize he had spoken out loud. I didn't know I said that, he muttered flippantly. He quickly got up and went to the bathroom to wash, leaving Tiwa alone in the dark. Tiwa's eyes turned cold. She was certain now Segun had found Teni and they were having a secret affair. She remembered how she had stolen him from Teni years ago, and she was terrified Teni was doing the same to her now. I am not like Teni, Tiwa hissed to herself. She was weak and didn't see me coming, but I am smarter. I will never let her take what is mine.